Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the channel. Tonight was UFC Vegas 55, Holly Holm versus Ketlen Vieira, the highly anticipated bantamweight fight. And this is going to be my post-fight, I guess really just talking about the main event. And I'm probably going to talk about the co-main and probably the featured fight on the card. I'm not going to talk over the entire main card just because there wasn't a lot of super notable fights on this card to begin with. And then they weren't all that great, in reality. So if you guys enjoy these post-fights, make sure to like the video. And let me know, do you guys enjoy when I do these post-fight recaps for these smaller cards? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious because I was debating about whether or not to even do this one. So I'm curious what you guys think. And if you guys suffered with me on the live stream for this fight card, thank you so much. I appreciate you. So Holly Holm loses to Ketlen Vieira via decision. And this is going to be a pretty big topic now because there's a lot of people screaming robbery, saying Holly Holm should have won this fight. Ketlen Vieira gets the decision. And I personally thought that Holly Holm won this fight. I thought she won the fight 3-2. I thought Holly Holm took rounds 1, 3, and 5. I thought it was 2-2 going into the 5th round, and I thought Holly Holm clearly won this fight. Now, we're going to go through the fight a little bit. I had one massive takeaway from this fight that I think really is the most notable story coming out of this fight card. We'll get to that in a minute. But basically, I thought Holly Holm won this fight with her side kicks to the body and her clinch work. She was able to control Ketlen Vieira up against the cage. This fight was not super compelling. It would look like a barn burner when you compare it to Carla Esparza versus Rose Namajunas 2. But this fight, on paper, I did not think this fight was going to be particularly exciting. And in reality, it was not particularly exciting. It was actually better than I thought it was going to be. First round was basically just Holly Holm controlling Ketlen Vieira up against the cage. I think Ketlen Vieira hit a hip toss in the first round, but Holly Holm popped right back to her feet. And basically just Ketlen Vieira was just controlled against the fence. Holly Holm was throwing some knees to the thighs. She did throw some shots, some punches to Ketlen Vieira's chin while in the clinch, but it wasn't super eventful first round. The first round was kind of close. The second round is what I gave to Ketlen Vieira. And the reason I gave her this round is she landed, I thought, the more powerful shots. It wasn't a lot. She also had a takedown, and she also had a very close rear naked choke. And Holly Holm didn't really do much in this round. A lot of hi-ya, 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 and a lot of swinging in the air. Third round, I think, was the closest round of the fight. I gave it to Holly Holm. More clinch work, more just volume in general. Fourth round, I thought this round was clearly Ketlen Vieira. Holly Holm was kind of rushing in, throwing combinations. Ketlen Vieira was just lighting her up with big shots. Fifth round was clearly Holly Holm. Vieira, for whatever reason, took her foot off the gas, and Holly Holm was just outlanding her and did clinch up with her and was beating her up in the clinch and landing some decent shots in the clinch. So this entire fight just basically consisted of Holly Holm throwing side kicks to the body, throwing combinations at nothing but air and screaming, hi-ya, 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 the whole fight. The most eventful moment of the whole entire fight was when Holly Holm was looking for a takedown, and Ketlen Vieira got a deep rear naked choke. But the reason she wasn't able to finish it was because she didn't have control over Holly Holm's body, so Holly Holm was able to fight out of it. She was turning red. I thought she might tap. It was very, very deep, but she was able to turn into her and get out of that rear naked choke. She started to almost grab the fence a little bit. Her fingers did go inside the fence, but I don't think it was an egregious grab, and I don't think it helped her escape the fight. And basically, this fight was typical Holly Holm, and I talked about it into the lead up of this fight. I talked about it in my prediction video. Holly Holm typically just uses her footwork, circles around the cage, throws combinations, doesn't really land anything super powerful, and just wins fights that way. But she has been evolving and growing her grappling, and she went out there and her main strategy was to clinch Ketlen Vieira against the fence and control her there. It was working for her, and that's what she decided to do. I will not claim robbery. I use that word very sparingly. I think that the third round could have went either way, and based off of that, the fourth and second round live I gave to Ketlen Vieira. I'm not going to go back and rewatch this fight. I don't think I have it in me. I already went back and rewatched Namajunas versus Esparza 2 for you guys. I don't think I'm going to go back and rewatch this fight and rescore it. But I do think Holly Holm clearly won this fight. I'm not going to call it a flat-out robbery. It was close enough. I did not trust the judges going into the scorecards. I said going into the scorecards that I thought it was probably going to end up being a split decision. But I do think there needs to be some type of judging accountability We need to get some answers, when they're and I get that I'm saying this one wasn't super egregious. I thought Holm won, but at the end of the day, maybe you rate, it's very subjective what you rate, because they're supposed to score higher damage, not, Holly Holm's controlling her against the fence, but how much damage is she doing? So it's very subjective, but I just think we need judging accountability, because the fact that they get to throw out some of these scorecards. There was a decision in a scorecard in the co-main event we're going to talk about in a minute that I thought was particularly egregious. And I just wish we could get some answers on how they scored this fight. I think it was round 3 that was the deciding factor. And even going into the 5th round, Ketlen Vieira knew she lost this fight. She knew she needed to finish. Andre Petnaris was telling her, did you come here to be a tourist? You're down 3-1. You need to finish. And I get that some coaches could be using that for motivation. I truly believe that he thought she was down on the scorecards, and he was telling her, you need to finish. And one thing I mentioned in my prediction video as well was that, Ketlen Vieira lacks a sense of urgency in every single fight she's in. She lacks urgency. And it was the same in this fight. The biggest takeaway I had away from this fight was the fact that Holly Holm's skill set, I don't know if it's ring rust or age, has fallen off a cliff. Her footwork was nowhere what it used to be. Her striking looked awful. She was throwing combinations, screaming, hiya, 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 which she always does, but literally looking at the ground, swinging at nothing but air. It looked like she had disturbed a bee's nest, and they were attacking her, and she was trying to shoo them away from her face. And at some points when she rushed in, Ketlen Vieira was landing nice power shots. And particularly in that 4th round, which I thought was 100% Ketlen Vieira. That round is not up for debate at all. I also think round 5 for Holly Holm was not up for debate at all. Holly Holm clearly won round 5. But Holly Holm just appears to, it could be she's 40 years old. It could be she's been off since late 2020. I don't know what the answer is, but Holly Holm did not look good in this fight at all. There's not one thing outside of her control and her clinch that I can compliment. The power didn't appear to be there. The striking didn't appear to be there. The urgency didn't really appear to be there. The footwork, her ability to get out of the way of big shots. Holly Holm has been notoriously hard to track down. Ketlen Vieira was able to take her down, I think, multiple times in this fight. Holly Holm was able to get right back up. But still, before, you couldn't even get in position to take Holly Holm down. She would be able to get out of the way. She was circling around with her footwork. In this fight, she was getting clipped quite a bit. And I think it might be time for Holly Holm to retire. At 40 years old, she's now lost this fight to Ketlen Vieira. Whether I agree or disagree with the decision, she's lost the fight. I don't ever want to see her fight for a title again. I've talked about her questionable resume. I personally feel that Holly Holm has rode the coattails of that Ronda Rousey knockout for 6 years at this point. Her resume is not that good. The best win is the Ronda Rousey win, which, again, that was a different era of women's MMA. But the striking doesn't even look that good, and people act like she's some great boxer. And I get, she's had a lot of kickboxing matches, but it just doesn't look good, especially at this point in her career. She appears slower. She appears that she's lost a step. She just isn't able to get out of the way of shots. And if she continues down this path and she wants to fight till she's 45 or something like that, she's going to end up getting brutally KO'd by someone. I think Ketlen Vieira could have decisively won this fight had she been just a little bit more aggressive. Holly Holm was not clipping her. The best moment that Holly Holm had this entire fight was a side kick to the body, which she was using to maintain distance. She used it constantly. She had a good outside leg kick that she was throwing throughout the fight, but she landed a side kick to the body, knocked Ketlen Vieira down. And then as Ketlen Vieira was putting her hands down to get back up to her feet, she slammed a massive head kick, but Ketlen Vieira was able to get her hands up and block it. Outside of that, I don't really believe there's high spots for either girl in this fight. Ketlen Vieira, they're already setting up as a potential number 1 contender to fight, the winner of Nunes versus Pena 2 at UFC 277. I don't really want to see that. I guess Ketlen Vieira, at least from the sports perspective, was better to win this fight because at least that's a fresh matchup where I don't see Holm beating Nunes. I doubt she beats Pena at this point in her career. Again, I think her skill set has fallen off a cliff. There could be a chance that it's just ring rust. She's been out for a while, but I just really don't think she looked good in this fight. But I do think she should have won the fight. I think the judges probably just scored the shots that Ketlen Vieira landed rather than Holm controlling her in the clinch and landing shots of her own. But let me know what you think of this decision in the comments. Let's move on to the co-main event. I don't want to make this post-fight particularly long. Santiago Ponzinibbio versus Michel Pereira. This was a very good fight. I enjoyed it throughout. I actually scored this fight for Ponzinibbio 29-28. I thought Ponzinibbio took the second round and the third round. I think it was very clear that Ponzinibbio took the third round. I thought it was very clear that Michel Pereira took the first round. The second round was up for debate. Now, this was a very close fight. I have no problem with it going to Michel Pereira. Michel Pereira was winning the second round, the early part of the second round. And then he started to fade a little bit. And as he started to fade, I thought Ponzinibbio, even though he was being outlanded in that round, I thought he landed the more powerful, damaging shots. And that's why I scored it for him. But it was razor close. I have no problem with the decision. But this just showed Michel Pereira continues to fade late in fights. Third round, the first minute of the third round, it looked like he got a second win, but then Ponzinibbio started to take over. In the beginning of this fight, the first round and then the first half of the second round, Ponzinibbio was having a hard time tracking Michel Pereira down. The footwork was great. He's super fast, and he would just circle around the cage. Ponzinibbio was cutting him off. He was trying to throw leg kicks to kind of slow that movement, but Pereira was just constantly getting out of the way. Then all of a sudden, he'd explode and land some nasty punches. He was busting up Ponzinibbio, had his nose bleeding, looked very good in that first round, looked very good in the early half of the second round. But as he started to fade, and we've seen it in the past, where Tristan Connolly faded in that fight and lost that fight by decision. It just seems like it's a perpetual issue for Michel Pereira. But I don't know if this is a guy that's going to try to make his way to a title. I doubt he does ever make his way to a title. I think he'll be out-grappled by the likes of Hamzat, of Shavkat even, of Colby, of Usman, of Burns. I think he get out-grappled. But he's a very fun... He would get out-grappled by those guys. But he's a very fun fighter to watch. And this is a solid win over a top guy like Santiago Ponzinibbio. He was slamming leg kicks. His teep kicks to the body were amazing constantly. Ponzinibbio was trying to just pressure and pressure and pressure. And Pereira did a great job of chopping the legs as well as using the teep kicks to the body to keep Ponzinibbio off of him, as well as the footwork, just constantly circling. And Michel Pereira, if he could keep up that pace that he has in the first round for 3 rounds or even 5 rounds, I mean, he would be tough to beat because he's just so hard to catch up to. And also, this was in the Apex where we have the smaller cage. So I really think Pereira, had he been in a bigger cage at a pay-per-view event, he would have looked even better in this fight because it would have been even harder to track him down. I hate that the UFC uses 2 different size cages, but that's a topic for another video. Ponzinibbio won that third round for clear. He landed some big shots. You could sense the momentum changing, towards that second half of the second round. And again, that second round was a coin flip. Could have went either way. Most people I saw had it scored for Pereira. I had it scored for Ponzinibbio. But again, it could have went either way. But I don't really think it takes away a lot from either guy. Michel Pereira, his stock goes up. He gets a win over a guy like Santiago Ponzinibbio. But it's not like Ponzinibbio looked bad in this fight. He still looked good. And, Ponzinibbio at one point was speculated that he would be a future title contender or a future champion. So I don't know where he really goes from here. Now he has the loss to, Jeff Neal in his last fight, which I thought he won. He also got knocked out by Li Jingliang, which wasn't a good look, but he was out for a long time before that. So maybe that's a little bit of ring rust. But Santiago Ponzinibbio always comes to fight, and I think the UFC will have him stick around for quite a while. And who knows, he could make a career resurgence. I think he probably might fall out of the top 15 now. Michel Pereira is definitely going to enter the top 15. But either way, I don't think he loses a lot of stock in this fight. Okay, moving down to the featured fight on the main card. ChidiNjokuani gets a brutal KO over Dusko Todorovic. Todorovic was just trying to grapple him the entire fight, just trying to hold on to him. At one point, Njokuani looked for a Darce choke. He looked like it was going to be really tight. Gave up the position because he wasn't able to lock it up, but he was able to find his way back to his feet. And they were in a clinch, and I was saying, why doesn't he disengage? I think he's far superior on the feet. And right after I say that, he lands a nasty elbow over the top and brutally sleeps Todorovic, drops him, doesn't even follow up on him. Referee jumps in and stop it. A great win for Njokuani, and this is 2 crazy stoppages in a row. And I can't wait to see where he goes. We need fresh meat in the middleweight division. We have guys like Nasruddin Imavov, Andre Muniz coming up the ranks. So now Njokuani can enter that mix. I don't know if he's going to get ranked off of this win, but I'm happy to see some fresh blood in that middleweight division. And this was a spectacular win. And it answers some questions about his grappling because Duško Todorovic is a very good grappler. He's been able to take guys down and control them. And he was in a bad position in this fight. NJokuani found his way back to his feet and then brutally KO'd him. And he had some great knees in the clinch as well that he was using before the elbow that he landed. But it was a great win and a spectacular knockout. Can't wait to see where he goes from here within the middleweight division. I'll be looking forward to his next fight. So I think that pretty much wraps it up. I'm not going to talk about the rest of the main card. Actually, one other thing I will talk about. Well, this isn't on the main card. This was on the prelims. I want to talk about, and this should have been on the main card, Jailton Almeida versus the GOAT, Parker Porter. Jailton Almeida is a light heavyweight who's looked like an absolute savage at light heavyweight. He steps in and fights Parker Porter at heavyweight. I think he was outweighed. I think Parker Porter weighed in the 260s, and I think Almeida weighed in about 225. He went out there. He hit him with like one punch in the stand-up, shot a double leg, took him down, just controlled him on the ground, and eventually was able to submit him. I think it was a rear naked choke. Able to submit him with a rear naked choke. Just dominated him in the grappling. It was at the end of the first round. He was able to submit him. It was a great win against the heavyweight too. So I still want to see him move back down to light heavyweight. I think he's a massive prospect at light heavyweight. I can't wait to see who he fights next. And it's a guy that I definitely have my eye on in the light heavyweight division. So I wanted to talk about that. That was a great performance against a much bigger guy. If he can take a guy down, control him on the ground as big as Parker Porter. And I know Parker Porter, it's not like he's a, top 5 heavyweight guy, but we don't call Parker Porter the GOAT for no reason. So great win from Jailton Almeida moving up a weight class. Can't wait to see his next fight in the light heavyweight division. So I think that does it. Thank you guys for watching my UFC Vegas 55 post-fight. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.